All right, so we're going to move into Chapter 2, and Chapter 2 is one of my favorite chapters, okay, because there is no doubt that this has transformed our lives, collaboration and communication information systems, more than probably any other application of information systems. And now let me just start out with something. I was the geekiest of the geeky, right? I was into computers since I was like 9 years old, right? I had all kinds of things. I graduated from St. Francis as a mathematics computer science major, okay, in 1992. I was so geeky, I was into everything, but 1992, I had never used email. Think about it. Think about that. 1992, that is so germane to everything we do in our lives, right? My sons, they're 6 years old, they have email addresses, right? My son Brock uses an email address. I was the geekiest of the geekiest, and 1992, I never used email until I started my job. And it wasn't internet email. We could only email people at the bank, right? And it was called Office Vision. So that is where we are at from where we started now, okay? From where we're started, from where we're at. So let's talk about, when we start talking about collaboration information systems, I want to talk about the difference between cooperation versus collaboration, okay? Because really, what we're going for, information systems, communication and collaboration information systems, can allow us to do both, but this is a higher level, okay? So I want you to think about the differences between cooperation and collaboration. What do you think the difference is between cooperation and collaboration? Go ahead.
Maybe like cooperation is like an understanding between two people, and collaboration is actually working together.
Okay, she said cooperation is like an understanding between two people, and collaboration is actually working on it together. That's good. I like that. Let me take an example, and this is a good example that I think you guys can all understand. How many people have been put on like a group project for some class? Okay, where you have 4 or 5, and maybe the output, the deliverable for that project is some kind of paper. Okay. How do you parse out that work? Pablo, you tell me. So you put your hand. Pablo, how do you parse out that work? Do you have your hand up?
No.
You never been on a group project, Pablo?
Yeah.
How do you parse out the work on a group project?
How do I parse out?
Yeah. How do you assign it, divide it? How does that happen? Tell me how that happens. On a typical group project.
I guess you get together and you just divide up the work.
So it's like how?
Equally?
Okay. Fairly? All right. But how does that work? Go ahead. Maya?
Usually you just assign it because no one wants to step up to the plate.
All right.
Somebody that's not doing that.
So group projects are hell, are they not? I always hated group projects myself in college because, there's always a couple of those slugs, right? That were like just hanging on for the ride. You know what I'm talking about? They're just like, oh, I'll take, whatever. I know Miko's going to do the work, so I'll just hang on for the grade. Right? You guys know what I'm talking about? Okay? But typically, this is how students do like a group project or group paper. As Maya said, what happens is they say, okay, there's 5 parts to this paper. There's 5 of us. You write the introduction. You write the conclusion. You write paragraph 3. Is that right? Is that how you guys do it? And then you throw it all together, right? That's typically, when I assign a group project, that's how I see it come. Right. This page is in this font, this page is in this font. You can tell. That is cooperation. You cooperated to do that, right? You did part 1, you did part 2, you did part 3, you did part 4, and someone else did part 5. That is cooperation, okay? So what is collaboration? What's the difference with collaboration? What if we collaborated on it? That's not collaboration. Yes?
When everyone does like everything together.
Okay. A little bit of difference. Collaboration is when everyone does everything together. Collaboration involves 2 important aspects. It involves feedback and iteration. So we would say, all right, let's start this, right? Let's start this thing, and let's have Dominic take a look at it. Let's have Plumman take a look at it. Let's have him provide feedback, make some changes to this component, and we go through multiple drafts of it, right? Iteration means multiple cycles of it, right? This is draft 1, this is version 1, this is version 2, this is version 3, and finally, finally we come up with the best product. Okay, that is collaboration. It is not like one person does this section, one person does this section, and we put it together. It is the possibility of saying, here's what we have. Everyone contributes to every portion. Everyone reviews every portion. it typically results in a much better product, right? It typically results in a much better product. It does, okay? So we are shooting for, when we talk about using information systems, we're shooting for collaboration. We're shooting for systems that allow us to collaborate on things. For systems that allow us to say, here are my notes, can you add anything to them? Can you expand upon them, right? Can you find anything that's wrong and then someone else does the same thing? We're going to use information systems to collaborate. In Chapter 2, we're going to collaborate on a unified set of notes, right? Not just, these are the notes that Jerry took, and these are the notes that Brandon took. We're going to have one beautiful set of notes that we're all going to collaborate on. And to do that, it wouldn't be easy, you know, to have like one piece of paper that was stored like in the chapel or something like that, and you went in and wrote something. We're going to use collaboration information systems. We're going to use something called Google Docs and Drive. That's why I want you to bring your laptop on Friday, because we're going to get that all set up, all right? So we're shooting for collaboration. Now, the second question in Chapter 2 is more about how you communicate, and I'm skipping that because that's more for a communication class. I want to go to question 3. What are the 4 primary purposes of collaboration in the business world? This is where I think we can make this a little businessy and make it make sense. There are 4 basic things that we use collaboration information systems for in the business world. They are, first, to become informed, okay? To know something, to understand something. And you think about it, when we started this class, we said we take data, we analyze it, we come up with information, and that's information systems are very, very good at this, right? To say, now I know what the sales were at this Evansburg Walmart for June, okay? Now I know what we have in inventory. They're very good at informing. And not just informing, but putting it in a way that everyone has a shared understanding of it, right? A shared understanding that I don't have a different interpretation than Frank does. You know, this is the number. This is it. Sales are up 10% or down 10%. Not, yeah, I think we're doing great, or I think we're doing bad. Collaboration information systems are very good at informing, okay? Very good at informing. But that is kind of the lowest level. Okay, that's the lowest, we can do that. We can do that in spades. That's easy to do, okay? That's not a problem. We're very good at that. The second component, the second thing that collaboration information systems allow us to do is make decisions. And it kind of builds upon becoming informed. For us to make good decisions, good business decisions, we have to be informed, right? We have to understand what's going on. We have to understand how much is in inventory. We have to understand that sales are trending up. We have to understand that this is the makeup of our freshman class, right? We have to understand. We have to become informed in an effort to make decisions. So they lead to one another, right? This is the base level, but the second level is we can use information systems to make decisions, okay? To make decisions. And I'm going to use an example here of how these two things can come together. And it's kind of a stupid example. When I thought of this morning, I'm like, oh, that's genius, Nico. This is really going to go well in this class when I give this example. Okay, how many people have participated this year in a fantasy football draft? Okay, so raise your hands high. Let's see. About, all right, I was hoping it would be like 80%. So it's about half, okay? Now, does anyone understand what a fantasy football draft is? Yes? So you pick players on other teams, and you put together your own team, and if they do well, you get points, and you beat your buddy, and you smack talk, and all that stuff, right? So one of the great components of a fantasy football league is the draft, right? You actually draft players, like you pretend like you're a general manager, yes? I've been participating in fantasy football drafts for probably, boy, it makes me look old, but like probably 20 years, okay? Probably 20 years. And that draft used to be an 8-hour experience. I mean, I kid you not, we would go to a bar or a back room in a bar, and it would be 8 hours, right? And the bar being in a bar didn't help make it go any smoother, but it was like 8 hours, okay? Because why? Okay, think about it. At that point, we got our stats out of the USA Today. The internet was just kind of in its infancy. There weren't applications like Yahoo and ESPN and NFL.com to drive that. So how did people, think about an NFL or a fantasy football draft. You have 10 teams, there's 14 rounds. what are you making? You're making 140 decisions, or people are making 140 decisions. Think about that. I'm drafting this player or this player. So people were using, where would they get their information back 20 years ago? What did people bring to fantasy football drafts to get their information? Because, Matt?
Didn't they have like a book?
Yeah, there are magazines, and people, my buddy wrote down these 10 players for me, he thinks they're good, and there's books, right? And what happens to that kind of information? Well, it's not organized right, you have to flip through it, it's old, when it's printed, it's dead, right? It can't be updated, it's dead. So that would take time. People didn't understand. Some people didn't have a damn clue, right? They didn't know anything, they didn't have any information, right? So when it came time to make their decisions, they're looking through this information. Someone had to keep track of who was drafted, right? That was difficult because that wasn't a shared thing. Someone wrote down the names and then someone would draft one and inevitably, 10 times around, someone would draft someone. He's already taken, he's already taken, he's already taken. And that's why it would take like 8 hours. Think about, if those of you that participate in a fantasy football draft this year, think about where those applications are, okay? I just did one with like my family, I did one with my friends, I'm gonna get 3, which is ridiculous, I don't have time to be in 3. But anyways, even my 6-year-old could get it, right? He could get it because the way it works now is they have applications and they have a unified ranking. They have, Jamal Charles is the best back, and then this person's the second best back, and the third best back. And it's all on, what's that?
No, Adrian Peterson.
Okay, well, yeah, he's up there as well. But think about it. There's a ranking, and it's all integrated in the application. So everyone's informed about who is drafted, about who is ranked the highest, about who just got drafted. And I just participated in one with my family, and believe me, there's 6-year-olds involved in this draft, and 9-year-olds, and people that aren't technologically savvy. And that draft lasted like 45 minutes, right? The reason for that isn't because they have a better understanding of football or football players, but what is the reason for that? Why does it go so much smoother, and people have better teams? Inevitably, 20 years ago, there'd be one guy that was a geek and loved football and understood every player, and he'd win. And this guy that didn't have a clue would have the worst team ever, right? He'd go 0-14, guaranteed. Now, because of these systems, there's a lot of parity, right? Everyone is making better decisions and making faster decisions. Why? Why? Yes.
Because the information's like all there in one place. I'm sure I don't know how the draft works, but I'm sure you pick the players that are already picked,
They're gone, right? You don't even see them anymore because they're not an option, right? So now we have information. That's not an option anymore. We have a ranking of who's available in their ranking, right? So we say, if I don't know anything, I'll just auto pick and I'll pick the top person available, right? So everyone benefited from collaboration. And then all the record keeping, all the tracking is done automatically. It is an example. It's a silly example, but it's an example of how far information systems have taken us. Now that decision-making process, those 140 decisions that took 8 hours, were generally poor, are now much, much better, right? And happens a lot faster because of information systems, because that information is available to everyone and very easy to use, very easy to digest. That is an example of how this happens. Now, to go from fantasy football to a business example, and this you should have had in maybe your Management 101 class with Mr. Eklund. There are 3 levels of business decisions that happen in a business, in an organization. The bottom level are called operational decisions. What are operational decisions? What's an operational decision? What's an operational decision? Yes.
So isn't it like let's say you're in a factory with people on the floor that they'll make a decision on something?
Okay, so operational decisions, I like what you said, people on the floor of the factory. You're right. It's a low-level decision, right? It is, if Karen at the cart, you guys know Karen at the cart? I love Karen at the cart because, she's great at her job, Whatever you do it well. She does. She's great at her job. And she makes operational decisions all day. She says, I'm out of coffee, I need to make more coffee. That's an operational decision. We're getting low on gum, I better call the vendor and order more gum. Those are operational decisions, right? Those are very structured decisions. If we know if we get down to a case of gum, we need to order more gum. Those are operational decisions. The second level are managerial decisions. What are managerial decisions? That's another level above. I make managerial decisions. I make operational decisions, but I make managerial decisions as the associate dean chair of the School of Business. What are managerial decisions? What are managerial decisions? Give me a level. Why is that different than operational decisions? Ian?
Like the bigger decisions that the managers make or the higher people make,
Oh.
like on the company. Or,
Okay, so for example, managerial decisions are usually about how to allocate resources, or like, what's the budget going to be for, adjunct pay for 2015, 2016? What's our budget going to be for hardware and software, for the marketing department for next year? Those are managerial decisions. Who's going to work on this project? Who's going to teach this class? Those are kind of, what classes are we going to offer next semester? Those are managerial decisions that I make, right? Managerial, there's, in any organization, there are managerial decisions, the next level up, okay? And what's the highest level? So I have OMS, what's S? You guys guess what S is? What's S? What's the highest level? You made the S sound, but then I don't hear it. What else? What's S stand for? Superior, no. Supervisor, no. Actually, some of you are taking a class, Management 401, that is all about these upper level decisions. What? Strategic decisions, right? Strategic. These are more long-term goals, like maybe, God bless you. God bless you. These are made at the C-suite level, right? This is says, like a strategic decision for the School of Business would be, we want to make Schwab Hall the School of Business, right? A new building. That's a strategic decision. It's a long-term goal. We don't want to offer. We want to offer a new program or new program in big data. Okay, a new major in big data. That would be a strategic decision. It's a long-term type of decision, right? Usually with multiple years involved. That's just, forward-looking, made at the upper level of an organization. So I want you to think about that. And I want you to think about the structure of those decisions. So we have operational, management, and strategic. Which of those, you remember we talked about structure? Which one is more structured? Which level is more structured decisions, and which are less structured? What decisions are more structured versus less structured? Operational, managerial, strategic. Yes, Christine?
Operational is more structured.
Okay, for example, those are easy, right? Those are programmatic. You can say, Karen says, hey, we're down to a pack of gum. Boom, I order a pack of gum, or another case of gum, right? Very operational, inventory is below our reorder point, order more. Very structured, right? We can actually use information systems to make operational decisions. Yes? We can do that, yes? Think about as compared to the high level, the strategic. Very unstructured. Maybe a group of C-level kind of employees meet and they say, what's going on in the environment? Do we want St. Francis to have 1,500 undergraduates in 5 years or 5,000? And how do we get there? And what do we want the campus to look like in 5 years or 10 years? Do we want a school of business? Do we want a science building? Do we want, whatever it might be? Very unstructured, right? Very, very much needs, a lot of buy-in and input and, looking outside and all those kind of things. So if we think about that, okay, these decisions and these levels of decisions, which ones rely more heavily on collaboration and collaboration, hence collaboration information systems that need information, that need people to give their point of view and maybe make an iteration and say, no, I don't like that. What level requires more collaboration and hence the need for more information systems?
strategic or higher?
For sure. Strategic, okay? You think about structured versus unstructured, I'm not saying, operational decisions never are always very structured. They're not, people have to think as well. But in general, this graph kind of explains exactly what we said. As we go from operational and managerial, there's more unstructured, there's more, ill-defined things. And if there's more ill-defined things, we need increased need for collaboration. When I was at the bank, there are people that spent their entire day, like I was a programmer, I did work and stuff, but as I moved up, in the organization, I spent most of my day collaborating, right? communicate via email, via conference calls, face-to-face meetings. Spend very little time doing actual work, right? Doing the actual work of creating these programs, but planning things, and communicating, and delegating, and making decisions. So there's a higher need for collaboration information systems at these higher level systems, okay? Now, we're going to keep going, okay? The third thing, and these things all kind of build upon each other. For us to make decisions, we need to understand, we need to be informed, right? And then for us to solve problems, we need the ability to make decisions, make good decisions, right? So solve problems, the very first, most important thing in here in solving problems is what? You see these 1, 2, 3, 6 bullet points up there. I'm not going to go through all of them. I want to know what the most important aspect to solving a problem is of those 6 things. Earl, go ahead. What do you think?
Defining the problem.
Okay, you're right. Why, Earl? That's perfect. Why, Earl?
You gotta know what it is first.
Yeah. And they always say, like Einstein, there's a famous quote by Einstein. He said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and then 5 minutes thinking of solutions, right? And Peter Drucker, you guys ever hear of Peter Drucker? Famous management consultant, okay, wrote a lot of books. He always said, you know, having the wrong answer to the right question is not fatal because you can collaborate, you can change things. But getting the right answer to the wrong question is fatal, right? If you don't know what the problem is, so defining the problem is key. And we need to become informed. We need to understand what the deficiency is, right? If you have a problem, defining the problem. A lot of you guys are athletes, you know, Taylor's a golfer, right? Understanding what's wrong with your swing. What's the problem, right? We've got to solve that problem. What is there elbow flying out, or knees, whatever it might be. Defining the problem is the key to this. And that takes collaboration to do that. For everyone to say, this is what the real problem is. This is why our enrollment is stagnant. This is what, we have to understand the problem. The other stuff, identify alternative solutions. It takes creativity, all those kind of things. But, there's some defined ones. Specify evaluation criteria, evaluate alternatives, and implement a solution. But I wanted to point out that solving problems, the very most important thing is first and foremost defining what the problem is. The fourth thing, and once again, these build upon each other. The fourth one is something called managing projects. And I teach a class on project management, and I think someone in here may take it actually, okay? Project management is a skill set that is very much in need in the business world. And project managers can make a lot of money because it's a high-level thing. Because you have to know things and understand things, you have to manage decisions, you have to solve problems. Because managing projects is getting things done, right? It's a temporary endeavor undertaken to do something in a business, right? To do something in a business. And information systems, we do them, okay? So managing projects is a higher level kind of thing. But believe me, they require the use of collaboration information systems very much more so than just becoming informed. We need to know where our project's at, right? How people are performing. Are we behind plan? Are we in front of plan? Are these deliverables up to quality? Are these, are they what we asked for? What the specifications are? All these things have to come together. And I'm not going to go into this because this really isn't a project management class, but all projects basically follow 4 phases. There's a starting phase, right? There's a phase where we say, hey, we need a project, right? We're going to do this. There's a planning phase. How are we going to do this? Who are we going to use? What kind of software are we going to do? When's it going to happen? How much is it going to cost? All those things. There's a doing phase. People are doing things, they're performing tasks, and they're billing hours, and they're meeting goals or not meeting goals. And then finally, there's a finalization phase. The phase where we say, how did things go? Did we meet our deliverables? Is there ways we can improve this process going forward next time we do this project? But information systems, collaboration information systems, are critical to managing projects well. Okay? Critical to managing projects well. All right. So we're going to come back to this in a bit, but I kind of want to define those things. Now, question 4 says, what are the requirements for a collaboration information system? And once again, we're going to look at the 5-component framework. We have Hardware, software, data, procedures, and people. Collaboration information systems have to have hardware. And what do they have hardware for? Well, they have hardware for us to participate in, right? For us to share, for us to save our group's work. You know, hard drives, mobile devices, you know, we can collaborate with mobile devices, our computers. There has to be some way for us to share the information, to collaborate. Now, we're at a much higher level than we were just 5 or 10 years ago, and you'll see that with cloud-based solutions that allow us to collaborate from anywhere in the world as long as we have access to the internet. Okay, on one document, not 2 documents or 3 documents, one version of a document we're collaborating on. We have to have software, okay, software that allows us to more effectively collaborate. For us to mark up things, like comment on things, like, hey John, I don't think this is quite right, okay? Maybe you want to take a look at this. For us to communicate to one another that, hey, I just put up a new version of that thing, to text message something. Google Drive, we're going to use Google Drive for a little exercise. Microsoft Web Apps, SharePoint. And if anyone's done internships, they will see that these kind of tools are used in the business world. SharePoint is a Microsoft product that allows for collaboration on various aspects in the business world. Data, okay, data, it says project data and metadata. So let's define meta. What does meta mean? What does meta mean? What is data versus metadata? What's meta mean? What, have you ever heard meta before? Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
Isn't it like big data?
Big data, it's a little bit different. Big data that's a new buzzword, right? But the big buzzword a few years ago was cloud, right? Cloud. Now it's big data. We'll talk about big data when we talk about the databases. But metadata is a little different. What's data versus metadata? What's metaphysical? Metaphysical. You ever hear metaphysical? Or metaphysical things? Nothing?
It's like when things are changing.
What's that?
It's when things are changing.
When things are changing. What do you mean when things are changing? Give me an example. You're not wrong, Brandon. I'm just.
Things like combined become another thing, or
Okay.
become something different.
All right. Becomes okay. I know what you're saying. What metadata is kind of like data about data. It's information about data. Okay. Data itself is like germane to the project. We'll go back to the paper example. Okay. The data that we're interested in producing if we're doing a group project and the outcome is a paper, like a final paper, right? Or a marketing research plan or whatever it is. That's the data, that's the project data. Does that make sense? That's the project data. That's germane to the project. That's the deliverable, right? That's the main data. Metadata is data stored about that data. For example, we know that we're in version 7 of that. And we know that Christina contributed 10 times. And we know that the deadline for that project is April 8th, okay? That is data about the data itself, right? Metadata, and when we have collaboration information systems, we need something to store the data, the project data, but we also need ways to manage the project, the metadata, right? Who's doing what? Who collaborated? When did they collaborate? How many versions of this do we have? When's it due? Where's it at? Okay, that's metadata. You guys see the difference there? No? Yes? Okay, that data versus metadata. Procedures, usually designed by the team. How we're going to use this. Beautiful thing about collaboration information systems, procedures are easy. They're usually intuitive. Did anyone ever teach you, did you have to go to a training class to use Facebook, which is a social media information system, but you can collaborate on there? Did you go to a training session in high school, how to use Facebook? No, the procedures are easy, right? They're intuitive, they're understood. We know how to communicate, that's part of our nature. So collaboration information system, not hard to use, right? Not hard to use. Procedures easy. People, they know when to use collaboration applications. And this I'm afraid, is probably one of the worst things, okay? Like at St. Francis University, we are, the faculty in general are resistant to change, right? There are, not in general, I don't want to say all faculty, because it's not all faculty, but there's a cohort that are resistant to change. So there are better ways to do something. For example, I'll give you an example. When I used to work at the bank, okay, when I wanted to schedule 10 people for a meeting, all calendars were shared. So I could see when Brandon was available, when Christina was available, when Frank was available, when Pablo was available. And I could look at their calendars, and there was a function in our email client, our calendar client, that could say, here's the first time all 10 of these people are available, schedule that meeting, okay? And you live by your calendar. Like if I needed to, I mean, there's times when I was so busy, I used to, it's kind of, right, gross. But I scheduled like, 15 minutes, because I knew I needed to use the bathroom at some point during the day, right? Something like that, okay? So, yeah, I have to put that on my calendar, or someone would schedule me for a damn meeting, right? Which is awful. But that's how it worked. At St. Francis, when I want to schedule a meeting with 10 people, guess how that happens? How do you think I have to set up that meeting? Yes?
Email them.
I email the 10 people. And I say, when are you available? And I get 10 different responses. And then I have to collate those responses. And I have to say, okay, looks like this is a time that everyone's available. Maybe, right? Maybe. And 6 people don't respond. 4 people they screwed up their calendar. And it takes an inordinate amount of time for me to schedule a damn meeting, right? To even have the meeting. Okay? Now, I've introduced something to St. Francis, it's called Doodle. You guys use Doodle, which is kind of nice. You can see when people are available. But still, it's unnecessary. Even that is unnecessary. If everyone used their calendar, kept it up to date, like I put all my classes in there, you can see when Dr. Miko is available anytime. You can schedule a meeting with Dr. Miko or whoever, right? So that's a good example. People are resistant to change. I like to use, when we collaborate on documents, I like to use Google Drive or Google Docs. And we have access to St. Francis, free, okay? Our IT service did a nice job, and they set that up. And they use it. IT services use it. But for faculty meetings, on faculty committees, they say, I don't want to use that. So we send versions of the same document via email. And what happens? I change that document, right? And maybe at the same time, Brandon got that email. He changed the document. And I send mine out, and then Brandon sends his out. And now we have 2 versions of the same document floating around. You guys know what I'm saying? And now Brandon said, oh, this is what I changed. And I say, this is what I changed. But they're not in one document anymore. Now we have 2 versions of the same damn thing, right? So people are sometimes resistant to use collaboration applications, and that can be a big problem. All right, so I see you guys are getting restless, which tells me that we're close to time. I don't care about that. I don't care about that. What we will start on Friday, we will have 3 presentations from Frank, from Christina, and from Pablo. We will talk about different types of information systems, structured versus unstructured, synchronous versus asynchronous, and whatever time we have left, we will fire up Google Drive. I've created an account for every one of you on johnmiko.com, so we'll fire that up, true story, and we'll start there. Bring your laptop Monday as well. If you're not here Friday, remember Monday, bring your laptop as well. We'll go doing some hands-on stuff in the next couple of classes. Have a great day. I'll see you Friday. We'll do.